Jake Morrison sat in the white meeting room and watched the angry aliens leave. The Zephyrians looked like giant bugs with 4 arms and wings that buzzed when they got mad. Right now they were very mad. Their leader, something that sounded like click hiss buzz when he said his name, was making angry sounds that the computer translated into English. The Corvani will pay for their theft. We will show them what real warriors can do. Click hiss buzz said as he walked toward the door. His 6 eyes were glowing bright red, which Jake had learned meant the bug-like aliens were ready to fight. The Corvani delegation sat on the other side of the room. They looked like walking lizards with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. Their leader, General Crack, stood up and hissed back at the Zephyrians. Let them come. Our ships will turn their flying bugs into space dust. Crax's voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. The mining rights in Tau Sector belong to us. We found those asteroids first. Jake rubbed his forehead and felt tired. This was the 5th meeting this week and they were getting nowhere. The 2 alien species wanted the same thing and neither would give up. In the old days, back on Earth, this kind of problem would have led to war pretty quickly. But Jake and the other humans had to find another way. Amy Brooks, his assistant, walked over with a tablet computer. She was young and still new to working with aliens, but she was learning fast. Commander Morrison, I have the latest reports from both sides. They're moving more ships into the area. How many ships? Jake asked, though he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. The Zephyrians have sent 50 battlecruisers to the edge of Tau Sector. The Corvani have 42 heavy destroyers waiting for them. Both sides are calling up their reserve fleets. Jake looked at the numbers and did some quick math in his head. Each of those ships carried between 500 and 2,000 crew members. If they started fighting, tens of thousands would die in the first day alone. And that was just the beginning. Space wars could go on for months or even years. Sir, Amy said quietly, the Council wants to know if humans will help with peacekeeping duties if war breaks out. That was the question Jake had been expecting. It was always the same. When 2 species started fighting, everyone looked to the humans to help clean up the mess. They wanted human medical ships to treat the wounded. They wanted human supply ships to bring food and materials. They wanted human negotiators to work out prisoner exchanges and ceasefires. But they never asked humans to actually fight. Tell the Council we'll provide medical support and humanitarian aid as usual, Jake said. But we won't take sides in any military action. Amy nodded and made notes on her tablet. She had heard this response many times before. All the humans gave the same answer when war broke out. They would help with everything except the actual fighting. The other species thought humans were cowards. Jake had heard the whispers in the halls of the space station. The Vorthan delegates called humans soft meat creatures who fear battle. The Cronin ambassador once said that humans hide behind words because they lack the courage for real action. Jake didn't blame them for thinking that way. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for almost 200 years, and in all that time they had never joined a war. When the Hegemony Wars broke out 50 years ago, humans sent medical teams and supply ships but no fighters. When the border conflicts started 30 years back, humans worked as mediators and peacekeepers but wouldn't pick up weapons. From the outside it looked like humans were afraid to fight. The truth was much more complicated. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked into the meeting room just as the last of the alien delegates left. She was an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Jake had worked with her for 5 years and knew she carried a heavy burden. All the senior human diplomats did. How bad is it this time? Lisa asked, sitting down in one of the chairs around the big table. Pretty bad. Both sides are moving fleets into position. I give it maybe a week before someone fires. The first shot, Jake answered. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then we need to work fast. How many casualties are we looking at if this turns into a full war? Amy checked her tablet again. Conservative estimate? Maybe 50,000 dead in the first month. But if other species join in and pick sides, we could be looking at millions. And they will pick sides, Lisa said sadly. The Zephyrians have allies in the insect coalition. The Corvani are part of the Reptilian Alliance. This could turn into the biggest war the galaxy has seen in over a century. Jake knew she was right. That was how these things always went. What started as a simple dispute between two species grew into massive conflicts that pulled in half the galaxy. Billions of people would die fighting over some rocks in space that neither side really needed. "What's our next move?" Amy asked. Lisa stood up and walked to the big window that looked out into space. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species were docked at the station. Each one represented a different world, a different culture, a different way of thinking about problems. Most of them solved their problems by fighting. "We do what we always do," Lisa said. "We try to find another way." That night, Jake sat in his small quarters on the station and wrote his daily report back to Earth. He had to be careful about what he wrote. The communication channels were monitored by the other council species, and humans had to maintain their image as peaceful mediators. But, between the lines of his official report, Jake included coded information that only other humans would understand. Ship positions, weapon loadouts, tactical weaknesses he had observed. It wasn't that humans were planning to join the fight. It was that they needed to understand how bad things could get. The next morning brought bad news. The Zephyrian fleet had moved closer to the disputed mining zone. The Corvani had responded by sending more ships. Other species were starting to choose sides, just like Lisa had predicted. Jake met with the emergency session of the council. Representatives from 30 different species sat around a huge circular table, all talking at once in different languages. The computer translators were working overtime, filling the room with a mixture of clicks, hisses, roars, and other alien sounds. "Order! Order!" called out the council chairman, a tall blue alien called a Etherian. "We must find a peaceful solution to this crisis." "There is no peaceful solution," General Krax roared from his seat. "The bugs want to steal what belongs to us." "We are not thieves," Click Hiss Buzz buzzed back. "Your species claims every rock in space belongs to you." The argument went on for hours. Jake and the other human representatives tried to suggest compromises. Maybe they could share the mining rights. Maybe they could set up a neutral zone. Maybe they could let an independent species manage the asteroids and split the profits. But neither side would listen. They wanted those rocks and they were willing to fight for them. As the meeting broke up with no agreement, Jake realized that war was now inevitable. In a few days, maybe a week, the shooting would start. Thousands of ships would blast each other to pieces. Millions of people would die, and through it all humans would work desperately to help the wounded, feed the hungry, and negotiate temporary truces. But they would not fight. The galaxy thought humans were weak. Jake knew the truth was much more frightening. Humans weren't afraid of war. They were afraid of what they might do if they started fighting again. Ben Hayes sat deep underground in a room that most humans didn't know existed. The walls were thick metal, and the door had 5 different locks on it. No alien had ever been allowed inside this place. Even most humans weren't allowed down here. Ben worked in the secret archives beneath New Geneva on Earth. His job was to take old paper documents and put them into computers. But these weren't just any old documents. These were the records that the galaxy could never see. Today he was working on files from something called World War II. The papers were yellow and fragile, but the words on them were clear enough. Battle reports, casualty lists, strategic plans. All of it from when humans fought other humans on Earth, long before they ever met aliens. Ben stopped reading and stared at the numbers on the page in front of him. 70 million people dead, in just 6 years. He had to read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. 70 million. Ben had been doing this job for 2 years, but the numbers still shocked him. The aliens in the galaxy thought they were tough fighters. The Zephyrians bragged about their warrior traditions. The Corvani claimed to be the greatest military power in known space, but none of them had ever killed 70 million of their own species in 6 years. Humans had done that before they even learned how to fly between stars. The door to the archive room opened with a loud click. Kate Miller walked in carrying a cup of coffee and looking tired. She was the security chief for this facility, which meant she was one of the people who made sure these secrets stayed secret. "How are you holding up down here, Ben?" Kate asked, sitting down in the chair next to his desk. "I'm reading about something called the Battle of Stalingrad," Ben said, holding up a thick folder. "It says here that over 2 million people died, fighting for one city." "One city, Kate." Kate nodded slowly. She had read all these files when she first got her security clearance 10 years ago. That wasn't even the biggest battle in that war. Wait until you get to the Pacific Theater files. Ben looked at the stack of boxes he still had to work through. Each box contained thousands of documents, battle plans, weapons manuals, tactical guides, after-action reports. All of it from the time when humans were still learning how to kill each other efficiently. "How do we keep this secret?" Ben asked. "I mean, some of this stuff is incredible. The strategies, the technology, the sheer scale of it all. The aliens think we're peaceful because we don't like to fight. But the truth is we're peaceful because we're too good at fighting." Kate pulled out her tablet and showed Ben a chart. "This is what the other species know about human history. According to our official records, humans had small conflicts over resources. But we mostly solved problems through cooperation and trade. We developed space travel to explore and learn, not to conquer." Ben looked at the official history. It made humans sound like they had always been peaceful explorers who preferred talking to fighting. Nothing about the world wars, nothing about the nuclear weapons, nothing about the centuries of warfare that had shaped human civilization. "What about the real history?" Ben asked. Kate switched to a different screen. This one showed the timeline that Ben was helping to document. Thousands of years of human warfare, weapons that could destroy entire cities, military strategies that had been tested in the blood of millions, tactical knowledge gained through centuries of conflict. "The real history stays down here," Kate said. "Only about 500 humans in the entire galaxy have full access to these files. Everyone else gets the cleaned-up version." Ben picked up another document from the pile on his desk. This one was about something called Blitzkrieg tactics. As he read through the details, he realized that the Zephyrian military was trying to use a similar strategy in their current dispute with the Corvani. But they were doing it all wrong. "Kate, look at this," Ben said, showing her the document. "The Zephyrians think they invented fast attack strategies, but humans were doing this stuff 300 years ago, and doing it better." Kate read over the tactical manual. "The Zephyrians are making every mistake listed in the what not to do section. If they actually try to attack the Corvani using these tactics, they're going to get slaughtered." "Should we warn them?" Ben asked. Kate shook her head. "We can't. If we start giving military advice that good, someone will ask where we learned it, and then they'll want to know what other military knowledge we have." Ben understood the problem. Humans had to pretend they were learning about warfare at the same pace as everyone else. They couldn't reveal that they had already made every mistake, learned every lesson, and developed every strategy that the other species were just beginning to discover. "How long have we been doing this?" Ben asked. "The cover-up started about 300 years ago, when humans first made contact with alien species," Kate said. "The decision was made at the highest levels of government. Humanity would present itself as a peaceful species that had always preferred diplomacy to warfare." Kate pulled up another file on her tablet. This one showed pictures from human history. Cities destroyed by bombing, battlefields covered with bodies, weapons that could kill thousands of people in seconds. The leaders back then realized that if other species knew what humans were really capable of, it would change everything. Either they would try to destroy us before we could threaten them, or they would want us as allies in their own wars. Either way, the galaxy would become a much more dangerous place. Ben looked at the pictures and felt sick. He had grown up thinking that humans were naturally peaceful. He had been taught in school that warfare was something primitive species did before they learned better ways to solve problems. Finding out that his own species had been the most warlike in galactic history was hard to accept. "So we just let other species make the same mistakes we made?" Ben asked. "We try to prevent wars through diplomacy," Kate said. "We offer medical aid and humanitarian assistance when conflicts do break out. but we don't intervene militarily because that would reveal too much about our capabilities. Ben picked up another file. This one was about submarine warfare tactics from something called World War I. As he read through it, he realized that human naval strategies were centuries ahead of anything the current galactic powers had developed. The Corvani pride themselves on their space fleet tactics, Ben said. But according to this, humans were using more advanced strategies in submarines 100 years before we even had spaceships. Kate nodded. Every species in the galaxy thinks they're military geniuses because they've never seen real warfare. They have small conflicts over territory or resources, but they've never experienced total war. They don't understand what happens when an entire civilization dedicates itself to destroying another civilization. Ben kept reading through the files. Tank battles that involved thousands of vehicles, air raids that destroyed entire cities, naval battles with hundreds of ships. The scale of human warfare was beyond anything the current galactic species had ever imagined. What about weapons? Ben asked. I keep seeing references to things called nuclear weapons. Kate's face got serious. Those files are in a different vault. Higher security clearance required. Let's just say that humans developed weapons that could destroy entire planets, not just cities. Ben felt a chill run down his spine. And the other species don't know about any of this? The other species are still fighting with energy weapons and conventional explosives, Kate said. They think they're advanced because they can blow up a building or destroy a ship. They have no idea what weapons of mass destruction really look like. As Ben continued his work, he began to understand why the secret was so important. If the Zephyrians and Corvani knew what real warfare looked like, they might think twice before starting their conflict. But they also might decide that they needed to develop more powerful weapons to defend themselves. And if every species in the galaxy started trying to match human military capabilities, the results would be catastrophic. Kate, Ben said quietly, what happens if the secret gets out? Kate looked at the stacks of documents around them. Then the galaxy learns that the species they trust to keep the peace is also the species that perfected the art of war. And once that happens, everything changes. Colonel Ryan Davis stood on the observation deck and watched the alien war games happening in space outside. The Galactic Defense Force was running their biggest training exercise in 10 years. 50 ships from 6 different species were practicing battle formations and attack patterns. Ryan was officially there as a military advisor. His job was to watch the exercises and write reports about how the different alien species worked together. But his real job was much more complicated than that. Ryan was secretly studying every move the aliens made. He was learning their weaknesses, understanding their tactics, and figuring out how to beat them if he ever had to. The Zephyrian fighters were buzzing around in tight swarms, trying to overwhelm the Corvani heavy cruisers with sheer numbers. It was an impressive sight, with hundreds of small ships moving like a cloud of angry insects. Look at that coordination, said Captain Helen Ross, who had just joined Ryan on the observation deck. The Zephyrians really know how to work as a team. Ryan nodded, but he was seeing something different. They're making the same mistake that fighter pilots made in the Battle of Britain back on Earth. They're staying too close together. One well-placed explosive round could take out 20 ships at once. Helen looked at him with surprise. Battle of Britain? I don't remember that from the history classes. It's in the restricted files, Ryan said quietly. World War II. Human. Fighter pilots learned that tight formations look good, but they're deadly traps. The Zephyrians are about to learn the same lesson the hard way. As if to prove his point, the Corvani commander fired a spread of plasma torpedoes into the middle of the Zephyrian formation. The explosion took out 15 fighters in one shot. The remaining Zephyrian pilots scattered in panic, breaking their formation and becoming easy targets. How did you know that would happen? Helen asked. Ryan pulled out his tablet and showed her a tactical analysis he had been working on. I've been studying Zephyrian combat tactics for 3 years. They make the same mistakes over and over again. They rely too much on numbers and not enough on strategy. Helen looked at the detailed charts and diagrams on Ryan's tablet. This is incredible. You've analyzed their entire military doctrine. It's my job, Ryan said. I do this for every species in the galaxy. The Corvani, the Vorthans, the Cronins, all of them. I study their strengths and weaknesses, their tactics and strategies, their weapons and defenses. But why? We're not planning to fight them, are we? Ryan's face became serious. We're not planning to fight anyone, but we need to be ready in case we have to end a war quickly. The war games continued below them. The Corvani ships were now demonstrating their famous orbital bombardment techniques. They formed a line and began firing energy beams at targets on a nearby asteroid. The alien observers were impressed by the display of firepower. Ryan watched the bombardment and made notes on his tablet. They're using a standard spread pattern from the military textbooks. Very predictable. If someone wanted to defend against this kind of attack, they could set up countermeasures pretty easily. How? Do you know so much about orbital bombardment? Helen asked. Because humans perfected it centuries ago, Ryan said. We had to figure out how to attack fortified positions during our colonial expansion period. The techniques the Corvani are using now are maybe 50 years behind what humans were doing 300 years ago. Helen stared at him. You're talking about human military history that's not in any of the official records. The official records don't include a lot of things, Ryan said, like the fact that humans developed the most efficient methods of planetary siege warfare in galactic history, or that we created weapon systems that could destroy entire continents, or that we figured out how to supply armies across interstellar distances. As the day went on, Ryan watched exercise after exercise. Each one revealed new weaknesses in alien military thinking. The Vorthons were too dependent on their heavy armor and couldn't adapt when their enemies used speed and mobility. The Cronins had powerful weapons but terrible logistics and would run out of supplies in any extended conflict. That evening, Ryan sat in his quarters and wrote his daily report. Like all human military advisors, he had to write 2 versions. The official report went to the Galactic Defense Force and talked about cooperation between species and lessons learned from the exercises. The classified report went to Earth and contained detailed analysis of every tactical weakness he had observed. This report included recommendations for how human forces could exploit these weaknesses if they ever needed to. Every species thinks they're great warriors, Ryan wrote in his classified report. But they're all fighting the last war, using strategies that worked against their traditional enemies. None of them understand modern warfare. Ryan's personal logs told a different story. He had been doing this job for 8 years, and the psychological pressure was getting to him. Every day he watched aliens prepare for wars that would get them, all killed. The Zephyrians were planning an invasion of Corvani space using tactics that would result in 90% casualties for the attacking force. The Corvani were developing defensive strategies that would work great against enemies from 50 years ago, but would be useless against modern attack methods. I feel like I'm watching children play with loaded guns, Ryan wrote in his personal journal. They have no idea how dangerous war really is. They think it's going to be glorious and exciting. They don't understand that war is about killing the enemy as efficiently as possible, while losing as few of your own people as you can. Helen visited Ryan's quarters later that night. She had been thinking about their conversation during the war games. Ryan, I need to ask you something, she said. How many people are going to die if the Zephyrians and Corvani actually go to war? Ryan pulled up his tactical analysis on his computer. Conservative estimate? The Zephyrians will lose about 60% of their fleet in the first week. The Corvani will lose maybe 40%. After that, it depends on how long the war lasts and whether other species get involved. That's hundreds of thousands of people, Helen said quietly. At least. And that's just the military casualties. If they start attacking each other's home worlds, we could be looking at millions of civilian deaths. Helen sat down in the chair across from Ryan's desk. Could we stop it? I mean, could humans end the war quickly if we wanted to? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Helen, humans could end any war in this galaxy in less than a week. We have weapons and strategies that these species have never seen. We understand warfare at a level they can't even imagine. Then why don't we stop wars when they happen? Because if we revealed our true capabilities, it would change everything. The other species would either try to destroy us, or they would want us as allies in their own conflicts. Either way, the galaxy would become much more dangerous. Helen nodded slowly. So we have to watch them make mistakes that will get them killed, even though we know how to help them. That's the burden we carry, Ryan said. We know too much about war to ever want to fight one again. Ryan's computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from Jake Morrison at the peace negotiations. The talks had failed again, and both sides were moving their fleets toward the disputed territory. It's starting, Ryan said, reading the message. The Zephyrians and Corvani are about to go to war. Helen looked at the tactical displays showing the positions of both fleets. How long do we have? Maybe 48 hours before the first shots are fired. After that, it's going to be a bloodbath. Ryan began updating his analysis of the coming conflict. Based on the fleet movements and tactical doctrines of both sides, he could predict with frightening accuracy how the war would unfold. The Zephyrians would attack first, using their swarm tactics. The Corvani would fall back to defensive positions and try to use their superior firepower. Both strategies would fail because neither side understood what they were doing. The Zephyrians would fly into kill zones and get slaughtered. The Corvani would spread their forces too thin trying to defend everything and end up defending nothing. Ryan, Helen said quietly, what if we're wrong? What if we should reveal our capabilities and end this war before it starts? Ryan looked at her seriously. Helen, if the galaxy learns that humans are the most dangerous military force in known space, what do you think will happen? I don't know. I do. Every species will start building weapons to match ours. They'll develop new strategies to counter ours. The arms race that follows will make any current conflict look like a playground fight. And eventually, someone will build something that can destroy entire star systems. Helen understood. So we keep the secret and let them kill each other. We keep the secret and try to find other ways to help them, but we don't reveal our true nature unless the survival of the galaxy depends on it. Ryan's tablet chimed again. Another message from the front lines. The war was about to begin and there was nothing they could do to stop it without revealing everything they had worked to hide. The most dangerous warriors in the galaxy would have to watch helplessly as less experienced species destroyed themselves through sheer ignorance of what warfare really meant. The emergency call came at 3 a.m. Earth time. Lisa Carter woke up in her quarters on the space station to see the red priority message flashing on her computer screen. The message was simple, but terrifying. Shadow Council meeting. Maximum security. Return to Earth immediately. Lisa had been expecting this call ever since the peace talks failed 2 days ago. The Zephyrian and Corvani fleets were now facing each other across the Tau sector, and shooting could start at any moment. But a Shadow Council meeting meant something much bigger was happening. 6 hours later, Lisa was sitting in a submarine deep under the Pacific Ocean on Earth. The meeting room had no windows and no decorations, just a round table, 12 chairs, and the most powerful humans in the galaxy. Director Paul Grant sat at the head of the table. He was a thin man with gray hair who looked like he hadn't slept in days. As head of the Shadow Council, Paul was responsible for keeping humanity's greatest secret. Today he looked like that burden was crushing him. The situation has gotten worse, Paul said without any greeting. 3 more species have declared support for either the Zephyrians or the Corvani. The Insect Coalition is backing the Zephyrians. The Reptilian Alliance is supporting the Corvani. The Etherians are trying to stay neutral, but they're getting pressure from both sides. Lisa felt her stomach drop. How many ships are we looking at? Admiral Susan Lee answered from across the table. She was the highest-ranking military officer in the human space fleet, though most of the galaxy didn't know humans even had a real military. Conservative estimate? Over 3,000 combat vessels from 8 different species. This could turn into the largest war in galactic history. Dr. Ben Hayes was also at the meeting, which surprised Lisa. Ben was just an archivist, not a policymaker. But then she remembered that he had been working on the historical files. Maybe they needed someone who understood just how bad human wars could get. Ben has been reviewing our historical combat data, Paul said. Ben, tell them what you found. Ben looked nervous to be speaking to such important people. I've been studying human military conflicts from the past 1,000 years. Based on that data, I can predict what's going to happen in this galactic war. Ben pulled out a tablet and showed them charts and graphs. The alien species are going to make every mistake that humans made during our early wars. They'll attack in the wrong places, use the wrong tactics, and waste enormous numbers of lives for small gains. How many casualties? Asked Lisa. In the first month, maybe 2 million dead. If the war lasts a year, we could see 20 million casualties, and that's just from military action. If they start attacking civilian targets, the numbers could be much higher. The room was quiet for a moment. 20 million people dead because alien species didn't understand how to fight efficiently. It was exactly the kind of senseless slaughter that humans had learned to avoid centuries ago. Admiral Lee spoke up. We could end this war in 6 days. Everyone turned to look at her. Admiral Lee was not someone who spoke lightly about military action. Explain, said Paul. I've been running computer simulations based on Ryan Davis's intelligence reports. If we deployed the 7th Fleet with full combat authorization, we could disable every ship in both battle groups without destroying them. We have weapon systems that can overload their power cores and shut down their life support without killing anyone. What about their allies? Asked Lisa. The same thing. Our ships are 3 centuries ahead of anything they have. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields, and our weapons can disable their ships faster than they can react. We could force a ceasefire across the entire galaxy in less than a week. Ben was staring at Admiral Lee. You're talking about revealing everything. Every secret we've kept for 300 years. Sometimes the secret isn't worth keeping, Admiral Lee said. How many people have to die before we admit that we have the power to stop it? Paul looked around the table at the other Shadow Council members. That's what we're here to decide. For the first time since we made contact with alien species, we're considering revealing our true military capabilities. The debate that followed was intense. Half the council wanted to maintain the secret no matter what. The other half wanted to intervene and save millions of lives. Dr. Nathan Gray, the head of Human Intelligence Services, argued for keeping the secret. If we reveal our capabilities, every species in the galaxy will want to know how we developed such advanced technology. They'll want to see our historical records, our research data, our weapons designs. Eventually, they'll learn about our real military history. And then what? Asked Admiral Lee. Then they'll realize that the species they trust to keep the peace is also the species that perfected the art of warfare. They'll either try to destroy us before we can threaten them, or they'll want us as allies in their own conflicts. Either way, the galaxy becomes a much more dangerous place. Colonel Mary Watson, who ran Human Special Operations, disagreed. We can't keep pretending we're weak while watching entire civilizations destroy themselves. What's the point of having all this knowledge and capability if we never use it to help people? The point is survival, said Dr. Gray. Our survival and the galaxy's survival. If we start another arms race, it won't end until someone builds a weapon that can destroy entire star systems. Lisa found herself thinking about Jake Morrison and the other humans working frantically to prevent the war through diplomacy. They were trying every trick they knew, but sometimes talking wasn't enough. What if we could end the war without revealing everything? She asked. What if we could stop the fighting but make it look like something else caused the ceasefire? Admiral Lee leaned forward. What do you have in mind? I don't know yet, but there has to be a way to use our capabilities without showing our hand completely. The debate continued for hours. Council members presented arguments, reviewed intelligence reports, and tried to predict what would happen if they chose either option. Ben spoke up again during one of the quiet moments. I've been reading about a war humans fought called World War I. Both sides thought it would be over quickly. They thought it would be glorious and exciting. Instead, it lasted 4 years and killed millions of people. What's your point? Asked Paul. The aliens think this war is going to be like their previous conflicts. Small battles, limited casualties, clear winners and losers. They have no idea what total war looks like. They don't understand that modern warfare is about destroying the enemy's ability to fight, not just beating them in battle. Admiral Lee nodded. Ben's right. These species are about to learn what industrial warfare means. They're going to kill each other on a scale they can't imagine. Dr. Gray pulled up casualty projections on the main screen. Even our conservative estimates show massive loss of life, and these are optimistic numbers. If the war spreads to civilian populations, we could see entire planets depopulated. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the numbers. Hundreds of millions of people could die while humans sat back and watched, knowing they had the power to prevent it. I want to hear from everyone, Paul said. We need to make a decision, and we need to make it now. Do we reveal our capabilities and end this war, or do we maintain the secret and try to find another way? The vote was closer than anyone expected. 7 council members voted to maintain the secret and find an alternative solution. 5 voted to reveal human military capabilities and end the war through force. The secret is maintained, Paul announced. But now we have to figure out how to stop a galactic war without showing our hand. Admiral Lee looked frustrated. We're condemning millions of people to death because we're afraid of what might happen if we save them. We're preserving the peace we've built over 3 centuries, Dr. Gray replied. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right choice. Lisa felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Somehow they had to find a way to prevent the largest war in galactic history without revealing that humans were the most dangerous military force in known space. How long do we have? She asked. Admiral Lee checked her communications tablet. The Zephyrian fleet is moving into attack position. First shots will probably be fired within 12 hours. Then we better come up with a plan fast, Paul said. Because once this war starts, it's going to be very hard to stop. 3 hours after the Shadow Council meeting ended, Ben Hayes had an idea that could save millions of lives. He was back in the archives, reading through medical files from human history, when he found something that made him stop breathing for a moment. Kate, he called out to the security chief. I need to speak to Director Grant right away. 30 minutes later, Ben was back on the submarine, standing in front of the most powerful humans in the galaxy. His hands were shaking as he held up a folder marked Biological Warfare Research, classification level Black. I think I found a solution, Ben said, but you're not going to like it. Director Paul Grant looked tired and desperate. The war had already started. Reports were coming in that the first shots had been fired between Zephyrian and Corvani ships. Tell us your idea, Ben. What if we created a medical crisis that forced both sides to stop fighting? Ben opened the folder and showed them documents from human history. During our wars on Earth, sometimes disease outbreaks would end battles. Because both armies had to deal with sick soldiers. Admiral Susan Lee leaned forward. You're talking about biological warfare. That's banned by every treaty and galactic law. Not biological warfare, Ben said quickly. Medical intervention. We create a synthetic plague that makes both sides very sick but doesn't kill anyone. Then we show up with the cure and force them to negotiate while we treat their crews. Dr. Nathan Gray, the intelligence chief, was already shaking his head. That's incredibly dangerous. If we get caught, every species in the galaxy will know we have biological weapons. We won't get caught if we do it right, Ben said. We make it look like a natural outbreak, something that affects both Zephyrian and Corvani biology but doesn't hurt other species. Paul Grant looked around the table at the other council members. How long would it take to develop something like this? Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of human medical research, had been quiet during the meeting. Now she spoke up. We already have most of what we need. Human medical science is about 2 centuries ahead of anything the aliens have developed. We understand their biology better than they do. How much better? Asked Admiral Lee. We've been studying alien biological systems since first contact, Dr. Kim explained. We have complete genetic maps of every species in the galaxy. We know their immune systems, their metabolic processes, their vulnerabilities. We could design a targeted biological agent in about 6 hours. Ben pulled out his tablet and showed them a rough plan. Here's how it would work. We release the synthetic plague near both fleets. It spreads quickly through their ships, making everyone sick, but not killing them. Both sides have to stop fighting to deal with the medical emergency. Then what? Asked Paul. Then human medical ships arrive with the cure, but we only provide treatment in neutral zones where both fleets can't fight each other. We force them to work together to save their crews. The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone understood what Ben was suggesting. They would be using a biological weapon, even if it wasn't designed to kill. They would be manipulating entire species through medical terror. But they would also be saving millions of lives. The risks are enormous, said Dr. Gray. If anyone discovers what we've done, it will destroy every relationship we've built with alien species. If we don't do something, there won't be any relationships left to worry about, replied Admiral Lee. Half the galaxy is about to kill the other half. Paul, Grant looked at the intelligence reports coming in from the battle zone. The Zephyrian and Corvani fleets were already engaging each other. Casualty reports were starting to come in. In just 2 hours of fighting, over 3,000 people had died. Dr. Kim, how confident are you that we can make this work without getting caught? Very confident, Dr. Kim said. We'll make it look like a natural mutation of a virus that already exists in space, something that jumped from one species to another during the battle. It happens sometimes in nature. And you can guarantee that no one will die from this plague? I can guarantee it. The synthetic virus will cause severe flu-like symptoms, but nothing life-threatening. It will disable the crews without permanent harm. Ben felt the weight of what he was proposing. There's something else we need to consider. Once we do this, we'll have proven that humans can develop biological weapons that target specific species. That knowledge alone could change how other species see us, only if they find out, said Dr. Gray. And if we do this right, they never will. The debate was shorter this time. Everyone understood that they were running out of options. The war was already happening, and every minute they delayed meant more people would die. The vote was unanimous. Operation Silent Cure was approved. Dr. Kim left immediately to begin developing the synthetic plague. She had a team of human scientists who had been studying alien biology for decades. They worked with materials and knowledge that no other species in the galaxy possessed. Ben worked with the medical team to design the cover story. They would claim that a natural virus had mutated during the space battle and jumped between species. They had examples of similar events from galactic medical history to make the story believable. Admiral Lee coordinated the deployment. Human medical ships were already moving toward the battle zone under the pretense of providing humanitarian aid. They would be in position to respond to the outbreak within hours. 6 hours later, Dr. Kim reported that the synthetic plague was ready. It was contained in small pods that could be launched from stealth probes. The virus would spread through the air recycling systems of both fleets within minutes of release. It's designed to be highly contagious but completely non-lethal, Dr. Kim explained. Symptoms will include severe fatigue, nausea, fever, and difficulty concentrating. Basically, it will make fighting impossible without causing permanent harm. How? Long before we can deploy the cure, asked Paul. The cure is already prepared. We can begin treatment as soon as both sides agree to meet in neutral space. The release happened during the largest battle of the war so far. Over 800 ships from both sides were engaged in combat near a disputed asteroid field. Human stealth probes released the synthetic plague into the battle zone, targeting the air supply of ships from both fleets. Within 3 hours, reports started coming in about mysterious illnesses affecting both Zephyrian and Corvani crews. Ships began dropping out of formation as their crews became too sick to fight effectively. Captain Helen Ross was aboard one of the human medical vessels that responded to the emergency. She watched as alien commanders who had been trying to kill each other just hours before now worked together to save their sick crews. "This is incredible," Helen said to her medical officer. "Both fleets are requesting immediate assistance. They're willing to meet in neutral space for emergency medical treatment." The human medical ships arrived with the cure, but only under strict conditions. Both fleets had to withdraw to neutral zones. All weapons had to be powered down. Medical personnel from all species would work together to treat the sick. Jake Morrison was part of the negotiation team that worked out the ceasefire agreement. For the first time in weeks, Zephyrian and Corvani representatives were sitting at the same table without trying to kill each other. "The outbreak appears to be a natural phenomenon," Jake explained to both sides. "Our medical teams believe it's a mutation of a common space virus that affected both species during the battle. General Krax of the Corvani looked weak and tired from his illness. How do we prevent this from happening again? By avoiding large-scale battles in areas where viral mutations are likely, Dr. Kim answered. Our medical research suggests that intense energy weapons fire can cause rapid viral evolution in the vacuum of space. It was a lie, but it was a believable lie. Both sides accepted the explanation because it gave them a face-saving way to end a war that was already costing more than they had expected. The peace negotiations took 2 weeks. During that time, human medical teams treated thousands of sick alien crew members while human diplomats worked to resolve the original dispute over mining rights. The final peace treaty was signed aboard the human medical ship, Mercy. Both sides agreed to share the mining rights in Tau sector and established new protocols for preventing future conflicts. What the alien species didn't know was that they had just been saved by the most sophisticated biological weapon in galactic history, deployed by the species they trusted most to keep the peace. Ben Hayes returned to his work in the archives, but now his job felt different. He was no longer just preserving human history. He was helping to shape the future of the galaxy by keeping its most dangerous secrets hidden. The real reason humans steered clear of war wasn't fear or weakness. It was the knowledge that they were too good at it. In a galaxy full of species learning to fight, humanity remained the civilization that understood the true price of victory. And sometimes the greatest victory was preventing a war that no one else even knew they had stopped.